Welcome to Graver Load, and we have more news this week to go through, and let's start off with Intel. There's not much for Intel this week, but XeSS 2 now supports Nvidia and AMD GPUs. So this was announced by Intel, another model here that we can be able to use technology that is on there if you need, smoother frame rates, the resolution scaling, whatever you want. Or you can also do it for the frame rate generation if you want to do that. And according to Intel, developers can offer AI-based frame generation with low latency technology to many more gamers by using the updated XeSS 2.1 SDK available today. So Intel is promoting that. We'll see if that gets into games and then what people test and where that goes. I'm not a huge proponent of frame rate generation. I think that some of the other upscaling technologies make a lot more sense. But I don't want. Maybe they figured out something with keeping it low latency, not introducing latency in the generated frame, but we'll see. I want to see that quality. That's what I game for. I know Hardware Unboxed did a poll back when, so I'm in like the 25% according to their poll, right? Now more people go for frame rates over the quality, but I like when I'm being immersed in a game, I want to see that quality. So that's what Intel came out with today, which is, a fine thing for Intel to do, give another technology out there, but we'll kind of see where they end up. I really hope that they keep putting a lot more a lot more effort into their GPU side of things, and getting more out there, because right now, while Intel's doing staying afloat, I would say, kind of, yeah, but they're trying to put some effort in. The CEO is trying to change things up and everything else. It really feels like that they are kind of disjointed in everything. I'm expecting Nova Lake to come out, expecting, well, we'll see. Expecting another GPU to be released at some point, but really, it's a waiting game a lot for Intel, and at the same time, it seems like AMD is really taking still the CPU side seriously, and they're also taking the GPU side. It looks like they're trying to get that right with the AI and get that, going with Nvidia, and it almost seems like Nvidia set their sights on the CPU side of just keep on just trying to progress forward and keeping Intel at bay. That's kind of how I'm perceiving it right now. And we'll see. Maybe Nova Lake can come out and close the gap and really make it a competition. But it seems like AMD just wants to stay ahead, and it's really trying to put some effort into competing a little bit with Nvidia. And if that gets there, then things could really be interesting for us gamers. And I just wish Intel would put that same effort. I mean, at this point, Intel needs to pick one and really focus on it and keep the other one alive, if that makes sense, kind of like what AMD did. And then once that one section is competitive, and hopefully it's just competitive and it just doesn't take over, right? And so if it's competitive and makes some money, then you can drop some of that money into the other one and make both competitive, and that I think would be a great thing for everyone around, right? So let's move on to Nvidia here. Nvidia's got a little bit more. We got a new game driver out this week. It's 580.88. So this one here comes with some fixes, some game support and stuff. So that's pretty interesting and good to know. So if you're DLSS 4 for Flight Simulator and Claire's Obscure Expedition 33. So if you're interested in that, those have there. And then they also announced the planned support for Maxwell Pascal Volta architectures and Windows 10 after the and I'll read this out from them. After a final game-ready driver released in October 2025, GeForce GPU's Maxwell Pascal Volta architectures were transitioned to receiving quarterly security updates for the next 3 years through October 2028. Our support lifetime for these GPUs reaches up to 11 years, well beyond industry norms. I do like that support keeps going on. I think that longer support's always better. And who knows, maybe we get open source drivers at some point. Man can wish, right? Because On a side note, while I'm talking about length of GPUs, it was Linus Torvalds. I think I got his name partially right. The head of Linux, right? The Linux kernel. He's been still running a 580, RX 580. So, once you go into Linux and you got some of the open source stuff, you can really make the GPUs just last a long time because you get support for it. And the other side to this, let's get back to where I was, right? Also, they say we're extending Windows 10 game-ready driver support for all GPUs, RTX GPUs, until October 2026, a year beyond the operating system's end of life, to ensure users continue receiving the latest day zero optimizations for new games and apps. So that's a good sign. I do like that they're supporting it a year after. I mean, you go through and you take a look at kind of what Microsoft's been doing with this stupid artificial cutoff for Windows 11. Nvidia is not just going to cut you off. They're going to let you keep using that GPU for a year. And so maybe they'll have, maybe we'll have an option here. Maybe Steam will pick up the slack, and us gamers that are being forced over because of our hardware, and we can maybe run Linux or something and have something there with a gaming box with maybe slightly older hardware that Microsoft's no longer supporting, but still works perfectly fine. Be able to still game on it because, yeah, I guess Microsoft still supports like LTS and IoT Windows 10 for a lot longer than just in October here in a couple months. So that's an option. And I know Tech Yes City has done some videos on that, so check him out if you want to see kind of what is going on there, what he suggests. He did some good videos on performance and everything else there, and go check him out. So video cards had this as well. I've been in between mostly video cards and some WCCF tech today. Got to make sure I put that in there. I do appreciate these people writing the articles and getting news as I go a whole bunch of places, but yeah, I like reading the stuff. And right now, the Nvidia N1X CPU. Now, we've heard a little bit about this earlier in the year. A lot of leakers have been telling us about this chip. One thing that we haven't seen, though, is an actual release of this chip. And Semi-Accurate had it first that there seems to be a problem with the chip, and that's why it hasn't been out yet. And that could be the case. Nvidia may have had to tweak stuff there. I was thinking that for the longest time, and I didn't have any inside information, that there was a problem running it on Windows, because we all know how Windows is with ARM. It's not perfect yet. But WCCF Tech did say that the firmware is running on the CPU, so on Windows. It's from the 590 driver branch, but this is something good to see that they're continuing to progress. I continue to think that you watch some of the Halo GPU stuff that AMD's doing, or Halo APU stuff, I should say, and this is going to compete with that. You got to see where Intel's going to be at here, because the one I think that has to be most worried is Intel. I think AMD is going to treat it as competition. They're going to have to keep on pushing. Granted, AMD still has an uphill battle, right? Because that's just the way it is right now. But this is one of those things where NVIDIA is really pushing it. I always welcome new CPUs in the market and stuff like this. I'm really interested in it, and I really want to see how well it performs overall. But some people are saying how well it was going and stuff like that earlier in the year. And as you keep getting more and more down the year, you kind of wonder where it's going to sit if it gets released in the whole computing stack with everybody else, right? NVIDIA's got to make sure it beats Intel. Otherwise, I think if it doesn't beat Intel out, especially on the GPU side, and I think it should, right? It's going to be an uphill, a big uphill battle for them, right? Because you want to deliver something to OEMs to get that first initial impression, hey, we got something good, and then work off from there. You don't want to kind of put it behind the 8 ball a little bit and make it, even though you have a stronghold on these these companies with the GPU side, you want to make it pretty seamless over for these OEMs to really say, yes, jump onto my product, and put them into a thing where, Intel, you got to deliver us something better for us to really keep producing at the rate that you want us to produce. Jeffries here, WCCF, had this, was estimated how many GPUs of AI GPUs, H20s, Nvidia has in inventory. 600,000 to 900,000, they say. And they say in Chinese demand for the GPUs is 1.8 million units. Now, I did read someplace that Nvidia was going to raise the prices of H20. I don't remember where I read that from. I don't know if that's actually accurate, but if they do, that would make some sense, right? uh, we don't have enough, we got to raise the prices. So, you know, there is that aspect of it. Right now, AI and everyone, the AI race is a money printing machine, and so yeah, it's get ready to print more money for these companies, and we'll see whenever it gets down to a point where it's just like, man, we're going to slow down a little bit. But right now, I do not think that is going to be the case anytime soon. So I think I'm actually done with all my Nvidia stuff. So let's jump over to AMD, and we're going to stick right there on the AI side of things. Now, it seems like AMD is doing pretty well. Looking at their quarterly earnings and stuff this year, because they do report quarterly earnings, it looks like they got a nice sales boost from the MI308, and they added more to their back end of their um, uh, earnings. So the second half is supposed to be better than what it is, and so we'll see where this all goes. I want AMD to actually be competitive in here because it is important overall to be able to do that. But one of the signs that shows me that AMD probably is selling some of these MI300s more than just well, it will be 350s, more than just, hey, to keep NVIDIA's price check in there, is that they are hiking the prices of their Instinct MI350s by 70%. So they must be very, gun-ho that, hey, we can go through and compete with NVIDIA on these. They're very performant, and, you implement, you got CUDA versus ROCm, right? But if they can bring people over and use this, they're very confident of it. It should help AMD's numbers here for the next quarter, especially. So we'll see how that all goes in the next quarter. So we got about 3 months before the report again. But this is one of those things where I see the high price or the increase of price, and I'm like, well, AMD must be able to compete a lot closer to this, and people must want it and be interested in that. Otherwise, you don't want to increase. You got some pre-sales, right? You don't want to increase all this stuff and be like, our channel's just going to be filled with our inventory. You want that to flow out and empty out the channel out of your inventory. Otherwise, it's not going to look good on the next quarterly report. So that's something I took away from it. Now, there's a rumor going around, WCCF Tech had this, and HLX on Twitter did tweet it out, that the 9000G series for APUs for AMD is going to be a refresh. It is not going to be like a Zen 5 one. That's maybe going to be later, maybe a 10,000G at this point. I don't know, but 9000G is a refresh. AMD just do a 8050G instead, like it says here. But I have a 9090 or 8700G, and that works really well. I'm very impressed with it, and so it does everything I throw it at. It's just in a little box. It's a little server that runs stuff here, and would like a little bit more powerful GPU on it, but we'll see. That's running right now and works really well. I like Zen 5, but it doesn't need to be upgraded every year. I have been doing it quite often, but it works quite well. So that's all for that. And I know there's more stuff now. Wait, I had this open twice. I'm going through my tabs. I thought, again, they're not organized the best, but, we're getting through it. AMD has another one here, and the Ryzen AI Max Plus, great name, AMD, now will allow for 128 gigs support also up to LLMs up to 128 billion parameters. So they enable all this stuff, and they came out with this, right? And it's one of those things where AMD is really making sure that these like 395s and stuff like that are coming and going to be some AI systems, right? They want them to be able to compete in there. I think another option, once if AI ever cools down for some of these Max ones, is to take that and to have a great mini PC. And on that topic is that there was another company that came out. A framework already has a motherboard with one of these ITX, and now Six United, maybe that's how you pronounce it. ITX is having, they're an OEM, and so we'll see. It's not the greatest I/O on this, right? It's only gig network. I like to have like 2.5 on there personally, because I can see this going into certain areas in my house and be like, you know what, it worked great there. But overall, some of the USB works really well. Comes with the cooler and stuff. But this has another ITX system that you have potential with for a board out there. Maybe somebody else is going to throw it into their stuff, and we're going to have a nice, little ITX system. I also think it could be a great, like, console-like system. Granted, it's going to be more expensive than a console right now, but maybe if you get down to like the 85, there might even be a 370, right? In AI Max, if you can do something like there, maybe that can be a nice little, console replacement. Game on the TV, something that competes with the console a little bit. We'll see. But there's options there. On the whole AI side, and there's the Radeon AI Pro 9000, right? This is out there, and or R9000. And one of the things is that WCCF Tech, or no, this was Video Cards, my bad, was saying, where is this? And that's a great question, right? They kind of pushed this out with the Threadripper 9000. You have the Radeon 9000, right? You're kind of going through and being like, where is this? It doesn't seem like it's on the DIY market yet. And it seems like AMD kind of fumbled this a little bit this launch. Now, granted, we're going more towards enterprise and that sort of focus here. So sometimes delays happen, but maybe they didn't have enough inventory. Who knows? But I was kind of disappointed about where the launch has been here. So, that's disappointing, right? So we'll see. We'll see how they do with the R9700. Get that out there and really push it, because they are competing with Nvidia, and they need cards in the market that, well, compete with Nvidia. 32 gigs of RAM should be a nice little AI card, and a little bit cheaper than some of the high-end Nvidia stuff, and you can get close in performance. Might be a great option for people. And WCCF Tech had this, and this was a rumor too, or a report, however you want to call it, that AMD is looking for another discrete option, but instead of a discrete GPU, a discrete NPU. This is pretty interesting. Something I kind of wish that Nvidia and would have taken on already. I know Nvidia's kind of pushed this all into one GPU, but if you think about it, maybe you can take that, put another dedicated card into your system, an NPU, throw that in there. Yeah, it's going to use up another slot, but we got enough. We pretty much have quite a bit of PCI lanes now these days on these systems, and so if we're able to use those, fill those up, and be performant here, the one thing downside is if you're ITX, right, you're going to have to make a decision, or it's integrated GPU or NPU, depending upon what processor you have currently, right? I'm expecting processor to have all this stuff down the road, especially if you're doing a lot of MCM designs where you can just add that chip onto the silicon for those chips to be able to manufacture, because AMD's done a great job there with all these chiplets. So maybe you do that. But getting back to the discrete card, this is one where it used to be a thing, right? You added in cards, right? Added in cards for 3D, right? That was a thing, and this would be getting kind of back to that. I could see a usefulness to this too, because instead of adding a whole bunch of GPUs to a system, you just add in some of these NPUs that do that AI calculation work for you, and hopefully you can have multiples. Could be kind of interesting for people that want to do that. Maybe even you have a dedicated memory on there and you're able to do a lot with that. So let's jump over to some of the Microsoft stuff. I thought I had Microsoft news. Yeah, I did. This was a really good one. For you, those of you that use dual screens out there, I use them at work a lot, well, all the time, right? I don't just turn one off for just some reason. That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I use it all the time. And Microsoft said that they will be addressing feedback and trying to improve the dual monitor support. So we'll see on some of the stuff that they're finally being able to implement and stuff. I keep going back to just I'm just not holding my breath on this stuff because Microsoft seems to say things and then we wait years for it or it gets canceled, right? So I want to see improvements to Windows and maybe SteamOS and Linux OS as it keeps trying to chip away at Windows is starting to make PC to take a look at saying, you know what, we have to actually, or Windows, we have to actually make things look better, or work better. And Microsoft is saying that they're making a serious commitment for 25H2's performance. They want to improve the performance of 25H2, and they are, as they explain it here, as part of our commitment to improving Windows performance, logs are now collected when your PC experiences any slows or sluggish performance. Windows insiders are encouraged to provide feedback when experiencing PC issues related to slow or sluggish performance. Following our feedback hub automatically collects these logs, which will help us root out cause issues faster. Use a desktop system sluggishness category when filling out feedback. So use a feedback hub, and they go on to say when logs are stored. So I really hope that they do because I've ran into slow sluggish stuff, well, more than once, right? So, I want to see Microsoft have a good competing product, right, overall. But on that topic, let's get to the competitor of Steam Proton, right? That is doing some good work over there trying to bring over a lot of stuff into Linux, a lot of gaming stuff, and they also fixed some bugs, got some new game support over there, and so Stardust, Star Ocean, the Divine Champions of Anteria, IL2, I don't even know how to pronounce that next word, Cliffs of Dora, Click and Fight, TunnelNet, WRC Generations, and Postmortem. So there's, they keep working on this. They keep fixing bugs. Some hairwork stuff is now working in The Witcher 3. I like to see this. I really hope that I think I got to try Bazite here a little bit and just see how that works, and then go from there. I keep wanting to see SteamOS, but Bazite I know is over there, and maybe if I build a box, just a game on, I'll use Bazite on that. So we'll see here. We're getting into more some of the gaming side stuff here now. And let's see, before I go into gaming, is there anything else? Let's just go to gaming. I think that's what we're down to now. Finish it out there. Nintendo Switch, they had their Switch 2, right, is out, and that's been doing surprisingly pretty well. I'm actually surprised at how much they've been selling. I think that they have over 6 million units sold in 7 weeks, they're saying. But you take a look at some of the profits here, and it does a telling story, right? The gross profit margin, and this is on Neowind, it says that, and they were reported, it's declined 29.5 points to 32.3%. This was due because there was a lot more hardware sales. The Switch 2 launch makes sense. So your operating profit ratio dropped from 22.1 down to 9.9. So you have a huge drop here overall, and right, you're just not making the same amount of money that you're making on just the software side of it. So I think that's kind of to be expected, right? That's kind of how this kind of works, but it's interesting to see. At least Nintendo's selling a lot of Switch 2s. They got still a lot of Switches in the market. I was wondering what the overlap is of how many people that got the Switch 1 went to the Switch 2, and how many just have never owned a Switch, just got the Switch 2. That would be an interesting number I would like to know. But they're selling them, they're doing a good job of it, and if they can keep selling them, right, they will eventually have a lot of people buying software on them, which in turn makes more money. Now, Battlefield 6 is specs have recommendations and minimums have all been announced, and really impressive, right? The minimums are a RTX 2060, a Radeon RX 5600 XT, and an ARC A350. Those are the minimums. You just need a Ryzen 5 2600, iCore i5 8400. It's interesting that they only did that. Now, it almost seems like they said Windows 10, but it almost seems like they went to the minimums of Windows 11 and just put those CPUs in there. That kind of seems like what they've done. But 75 gigs, right? You need that in an SSD. And recommended, right? So if you want to go balanced at 1440p at 60 or 1080p at 80 frames per second, plus that's going to be a 3060 Ti, RX 6700 XT, or a B580. So only need 8 gigs of video memory, and they're only saying an Ryzen 3700X or a 10700. Not even a K. That's what 10700 for Intel. Really kind of nice entry specs overall. Impressed with it, and maybe this is going to be something I'm going to have to pick up and try out because, man, it seems kind of interesting here. So uh, we'll see. Let's jump into some PlayStation news. There's a little bit more leak today. Moore's Law is dead. Had some more stuff on these. Highly recommend you go check out his leaks on there if you're looking at some of these rumors that are flowing around. But he's talking about the AX2 GPU die in there and some of the stuff with that Xbox related side of things. Then he also mentioned a PlayStation 6 with the PlayStation 6 handheld. So that's a cool, interesting aspect of it. And I'm excited to see what they kind of do with a handheld versus a PlayStation 6 and how all those games transfer and play. They said that there's a low power mode, but what's the backwards compatibility could be a really interesting thing. Something that Microsoft could have ironed out here years ago between PC, console, and now these handhelds. Does Sony just come around and kind of surpass that? That's one thing I was, most interested in with some of this leak is how that happens. I'm really interested in the hardware. I'll let you go watch his video on the hardware side of it as he goes through it. He did the leak. He, given some views. So he does a great job there of going through all the information he has. But it's a really interesting leak and everything else out there. So excited to see kind of what the next generation is because I love hardware. So it's hardware and software is fun, right? They work together, but new hardware, new software, always pushing the limits. Hopefully we got something here that's competitive, a good product for a good price, and maybe Sony can deliver on that. Maybe put the handheld, right where maybe 350, 450, someplace in there. The console maybe a little bit more than that, and you kind of have two levels there and see where it all goes. Will it be as much as a PlayStation Pro? I don't know. Some of the rumors that he has are, PlayStation 5 Pro, I should say, a little bit lower. But if they do that, maybe we'll see what Xbox does, right? Because that's also the interesting side of where it is. You got to play the markets, got to play where you're at, and got to have something competitive because you want people to go out and buy it too. So EA, as much as we've complained about EA over the years, they will not be raising their prices for currently. Right now, games will not be beyond $70. Now, that's the base game. That's not, all the add-ons and everything else. But that was interesting, right? So now we've had Microsoft saying that they're rolling back some of their game prices, especially through the holiday season. EA saying they're not going to raise. I thought for sure everyone was just going to go and just be blind to this and be, we're raising our price, and Nintendo gave us the leeway. Now, maybe Nintendo can, go through that and demand that. But this is pretty impressive that they're backing down on it. I do still expect GTA 6 to be like $90 to $100 per for the base game, right? We'll see what that actually does because maybe they'll also go, yeah, we're not raising it too. And maybe that's just the way where we're at, where gamers do not want that increase in price, and they're kind of making it known, which, good job gamers, right? I'm more of a sales per gamer, so I wait for the sales and then I finally buy the game. Uh, but that's one of those things that I would be watching and paying attention to see, or I would be watching just to see where this all goes in the future. So Battlefield 6 is going to be $70, right? So that's good to see. Now, there was a Half-Life 2 remake by a fan. Really some cool, the visuals look pretty good. So the screenshots, that were in this article from WCCF Tech look really good. I'm really impressed with some of the visual, improvements here. And while, these remakes continue to happen, I am still waiting for that Half-Life 3, right? I appreciate these things. So I'll take a look at this remake, right? If it's for sale and stuff, once it gets out of active development, it's, yeah, right. I think it's still in development, but it's a tech playable demo right now. But if you were to sell it, I'm probably gonna buy it because I do like Half-Life. That's one of my favorite games, so I would probably buy that. But Half-Life 3, I was trying to get to horrible segue, but I was trying to get to this, right? I was thinking about this the whole time. Half-Life 3, right, will it ever come out? Who knows? But one can hope, right? Especially with how much I like Half-Life. I thought it was a great game. I still play it. I still go back and play it. But Half-Life 3, I guess, is getting some refactoring, some improvements here, some final stuff done to it, documentations, and there's been reports that developers are moving on to other projects. We'll see. Can it come out? This would be one game I probably would buy straight out right away, and I would play it. I'd find time to play it because that's what I really need is time to play. Uh, that's one thing I need to have. Now, we'll look at this real quick. Starfield, I thought would already be on PlayStation 5 by now. It's been out for a while, right? And it looks like that it is not going to be to the PlayStation 5 until 2026. And that's also when the second expansion is going to come. Now, who knows why this is? Maybe that there isn't as many people playing it as they did, or there's also saying that there was low sales of the first expansion. Maybe you do something good for the second expansion that helps with the sales of the first expansion too. You can do, depending upon how they do it. Maybe they include both. Who knows? But these are things that you kind of work and you kind of do that and you can kind of get there. I know my friend did play Starfield. He enjoyed it, so I have to ask him about the first expansion to see how he liked that. But yeah, this is just, it looks like we're waiting here for a little bit before you get that expansion. Now, if you're a gamer, you like high frame rates, the AOC is launching a new monitor, 610 hertz monitor. So you want gaming performance or fast refresh and everything else, this is for you. It's really tailored to, the professional gamers market and those people that really like to go in and play this. So that's one thing that if you are, the Counter-Strike and you're playing that a lot, this monitor is for you because I think, yeah, it's Counter-Strike themed. That's right. Read this earlier in the week and I'm going, what's about this? Yeah, it's really kind of cool. Is this something for me? No. Again, I'm more of a quality. I do like good frame rates, but I like good quality. I like the visuals, and so we'll kind of see where this all ends up. But where am I now? I think I'm actually done for the week here. There are some gaming sales, but that's about it. I was looking at some of that stuff. Overall, just fun stuff going on this week. Hopefully, we're getting into the last, half of the year. So hopefully, some more releases will come. We'll be able to enjoy some more tech stuff. But that is all I have for you this week of Tony Tech Topics. I want to thank you so much for listening, watching, and subscribing, hitting the bell icon, supporting the channel. It really, really does help out. Watching another one of my videos, I really appreciate it. And until next time, God bless.